I'll actually make a statement. Just as I was driving here, I was thinking about instead of starting with questions. First, I'll tell you, I'm looking forward to the start of this year. I really am. You'll ask me, I can't tell you how good we're going to be or anything like that, but I am looking forward to it. I like my team. I really do. And I'll be happy to answer all the questions that you have for me, time permitting. But as I'm starting my 10th year, I wanted to just take, 9 full years. I want to thank all of over the 9 years and even starting this 10th year, every single player that I've coached here, every manager that I've had in the program or we've had, every trainer, the doctors, my coaches that are with me, that aren't with me, just for being part of helping put this program where it is. I don't take that lightly. I was just thinking about it, that you are the result of all the people that are willing to be part of it through the successes and the failures. And I'd been remiss if I didn't mention those people and how much they've meant. And just as I thought about, man, I'm going into my 10th year, there's been a lot of willing, humble, hardworking managers, coaches, players, doctors, trainers, all that, strength coaches, you name it. So interns that I just really it just dawned on me that that's good stuff, and wouldn't be sitting here in front of you starting my 10th year if they weren't here. I'd probably be, who knows where I'd be, but they've enabled me as the head coach, but it's all of our programs, part of it. So I wanted to make sure I did that. I don't know if that's appropriate, but it's done.
So we have Ben and Stephanie with the mics. We'll start with Jeff, and then we'll come over here to Mike.
Some players are more advanced than others defensively when they get here. Where is Kihei Clark in that regard?
He's a good, real good on-ball defender. He's a pest. He gets after the ball. He's quick, and he's strong, though he's smaller. But his on-ball defense, I haven't coached a lot of guys like him, that can really pick up. At times, Nigel could do it last year. John Tell Evans, Bub was terrific. But Kihei has, they're all a little bit different, but that kind of tenacity and ability to pester the ball and ignite the guys behind him. So on ball, he's willing and aggressive and talented in that regard, and getting better off the ball. But I like that part, and I think that's an important piece.
How does that change the pack line when you have a guy who can do that?
Yeah, I think it makes it better. I mean, again, the pack line, if you came to our practices, you'd hear me say a lot, 1 on, 4 in. If you know what the line is, it's the ability to have one guy. You should be able, ball pressure, being active on the ball is an important part of that. And sometimes if it's down the floor or wherever, when you can apply pressure or heat or activity on the ball, we always liken it to a quarterback in the pocket. If he can window shop and has time, he'll be able to dissect and pick apart a defense. But if he's rushed a little bit or feels pressure, it changes everything, and that's a big part of it for all of our guys. But he can. I played against Muggsy, so I know what someone who's up under you and always doing that is can be a problem.
Mike and then Ron.
When we came out to the scrimmage, then when we saw you in Charlotte, you indicated that the defense wasn't where you wanted it to be. And I asked some of the guys, and they said, well, that's maybe a little bit of coach being coach, that you always want more.
Oh, really? That's what they said, huh? You have to ask me after. No.
I won't say who. But where are you in that process, and has there been progress since we last saw you?
Yeah, I think there's progress. I think, those scrimmages reveal a lot, and sometimes it exposes. Again, I can't. Well, actually, I think I can comment on some of them, but they changed the NCAA rule. I forget on that. But there's things that when we weren't right, really exposed some issues. And then we saw when ball pressure was applied, and then when we really came together and collectively were good defensively, where we became effective. So I think there's been some gains, some strides, and there's also been it's kind of an up and down. But that's a process. You start that over really every practice, every game, to commit to being good defensively. But some guys are understanding it a little more. That's when you talk about this team and it's a different team. You lost some key experienced guys. That Isaiah was one of the best cover guys. Like, he covered for everybody. That's to find that stuff in players, and that is still a process. But if it's so much of it's this, and when those are aligned defensively, you can be pretty solid, and that's a commitment. That's a decision you make, and so that's part of can you commit to that every possession, every day, and keep building on it a little bit better than it was, but still has steps to go. Will all year.
Okay, Ron, and then
As you look back at your early years here, the first 2 years, you guys were about a 500 team. And I believe it was 2011-12, you guys really started the streak of at least 20 wins every season. Do you look at that season as kind of the turning point in this program? And if so, what was special about that year?
Is that that was my third year here? Is that the year that we put with TAY on our shirts? Was that year? Okay, so, that was our theme. I had that as a theme at Washington State, and there's a little debate grammatically what's correct. Is it I had capital T, capital A, capital Y. That was our thing, and I know turnaround could be one word. Jeff corrected me, and I know that. No, I'm just kidding. With the A circle. But the idea of we established, look, this is a turnaround year. At the start of the season, this is a turnaround year. I always like to have themes and think about that. And I think that was, there's always steps or turning points, but I think that was important. That was our first year we made the NCAA tournament. We were just talking about that, Jeff. We limped in. We started with a really exciting team, and man, Paul Jesperson came off of red shirt. Joe had a club on his hand. Joe was terrific last night, Harris, if anybody watched him with the Nets. 23 points and a warrior. It was great. But guys were injured. But that team established some really good stuff, made it to the tournament, got pounded in the tournament, but it was the step of postseason, and I thought it was an important year. And I think there was still some more turning points even in, different things last year and the years previous, but that would have been probably that third year is where I would say it did turn. And I just experienced the guys you had, a challenge for them. Again, you never know, you hope. And, when we were healthy, I said, okay, there's some experience. There was Mike Scott. I believe our first years were – is that the year Malcolm got hurt? Yeah, he was really good. I remember we played Michigan in the ACC Big Ten Challenge, and that's where he came on like, whoa, he made plays that was beyond his years. But all of those guys, the young guys were in their second year, that group, experienced older players, Sammy and Hassan. So I just felt – who else?
Yeah, Hassan.
Oh, Hassan, okay, that you said. I just felt like there was enough there to make a push and go after that.
Paul and then David.
Tony, you're very fond of Jack Salt. I know he's an important player to you. Statistically, when you look at him, you don't come away that impressed. So what are the intangibles he brings to the team? Would it be fair to say that in some ways he's the heart of the team?
I think he's a warrior. His physicality, his ability to screen, run the floor, get on the glass, use his body, things like that. Isaiah didn't have the greatest statistical year, but those guys are immeasurable. They understand their roles. They know who they are. So I think he's I don't know if there's one heart, but he's absolutely he brings that grittiness and toughness. You've seen games where there's just certain games where if you don't have physicality on the interior, it can be very difficult. And there's just certain matchups that you have to have that he's allowed us to do. Sometimes not trap the post, but it's a number of things, and he's as faithful and committed to the team as many of the guys in our past years have been a huge part of our success.
Tony, how would you assess Momedy's off-season development, and when fans come out and see the Towson game, what might they notice and how he's changed?
I think he has improved. I've mentioned before, I think, Momedy in a sense could be an X factor for us with his athleticism and his length, and he's now in his third year of playing, fourth year in the program. And so I think he is just an improved player with his experience. He's gotten stronger. He's shot the ball well up to this point from the outside. That part's improved. And, when he just simplifies, some things, he can be effective. And he's a wonderful young man. The whole team is. That's always, I've been blessed to have that here for the most part for all the years I've been here. But he's got a contagious or infectious personality, the way he's very I don't know if it's a little bit like Justin Anderson, but he's always happy. He's always you just watch him around people and you pick that up. So, but basketball-wise, I think he has improved, and I think I believe you'll see that.
Tony, Jay Wright always says every time he plays you or scrimmages you, he learns a lot about his team. I'm assuming it's likewise. What did you learn about your team in that scrimmage and the other scrimmage?
Yeah, I think We break them up into different segments, but specifically about Coach Wright's team, I mean, they have won 2 national championships in the last 3 years for a reason. They have a different team, but they're tenacious. They're ready from the start. Their intensity and physicality, if you're not prepared or ready for it, will knock you back, and that happened to us. It really was. It was interesting, and you learned how ready you have to be. You can think you're ready, but there's a level of pressure they put on you that taught us some things. So, and again, just they have, they spread the floor. They're talented. They're aggressive off the dribble. They're big guys for the most part, can shoot. And in those 2 years we played them, they were great games that way. And in the scrimmages, they were good. Same, the Richmond's a different kind of scrimmage, and they did a good job. They've improved. They run some Princeton stuff, a lot more switching defensively. So you're seeing different things that I think prepare you and tell you what you need to work on. So, but the physicality and intensity of Villanova, and then just how cerebral Richmond was and how they move, how they switch. They make you play hard, but think through it too. Of course, you have to with Villanova, but I think those were really good scrimmages for us.
And even though those were scrimmages and it's early, what about this team? Does it remind you of any other team you've coached, or is this unique?
I think it's too early to say. I think, now that Braxton's eligible, we have some more versatility, or we can vary sometimes how we're playing and which guy's out there. So he did not play in the Richmond scrimmage, but he did get to compete in the Villanova scrimmage here. And so, that gave us a little more of a feel. But there is some versatility. I like him, I think. No, of course I like him. I think there's some upside. It's going to be how how we perform, how we come together, and all the areas that every coach talks about all the time. When you go through the rough spots, can we stay healthy? There's a lot of factors that will determine it. But there are some nice move different parts. You can put different lineups. So you can go big. You can have a little versatility, which I think is important.
Coach, they talked a lot. There was a lot of talk this summer about Ty's leadership development. He got a lot of praise in that. What do you see from him that you really like in the leadership avenue, and how does he compare to the guys that just left when you have like Devin Hall and Isaiah Wilkins? Yeah,
now Ty's improved too. As Mommy, all the guys, I think they had a good off season in terms of working and improving. I think most college players do, but Ty is a natural leader. He's very vocal. He really he'll demand, and I've even encouraged him and challenged him. Hey, sometimes you try to, some guys you have to figure out what guys need. This guy might need a pat on the back, and this guy might need to be pushed a little harder, and it's a delicate balance being a leader. I think Isaiah and Devin were, I don't want to say good cop, bad cop, but they had their own personalities, and Ty, I'm asking him to kind of do both, but he's very competitive. That is one of the things I loved about Ty when I first recruited him, and you can see that. And I think, the players, his teammates respect his game, and, leadership's also about, not just on the court, it's off the court, so a lot of things like that. I think he's really wants to be one of the leaders of this team and grow in that, and I think he's done a really good job so far in practice. He's got a good voice, a loud voice, and he talks all the time. I don't know if that's the New York in him or not, but it's a good thing.
We've come here many years, and you were looking at redshirting some players. I guess Francisco is being redshirted. Anybody else? A possibility?
I always wait until the very last moment and decide. It's right now I'm not sure. How's that? We make that. I really, because we're gonna. I want to talk to our staff and address some things, but we did some scrimmaging yesterday, and we're kind of still evaluating and seeing where things are at. But Francisco, yes, that's he will most likely obviously be that with the knee injury and all that. But after that could be all. I've talked, there's a chance of Cody, but I'm not sure. We're going to discuss that and talk about that. He's done some good things, and that's why I'm hesitant in answering. We're going to see.
You talk about the physical presence underneath with Jack. With Isaiah leaving, who needs to step up in that role this year? Is it Mamadi that comes in for kind of the front court?
Yeah, I think, Jack and Mamadi. I think that at times, the versatility of playing DeAndre, as a big guard, a 4-guard lineup, a forward, however you want to say it. Braxton has that ability in there. So I think, those guys will have to do that. And again, you can go big with Mamadi and Jack. Jay is tall, and he's skilled. Physicality wise, he'll be certain matchups, but he presents some problems on the other end. So, but the physicality was the question. I think that has to come through Jack and Mamadi and all of them, but Braxton and then I'd want to keep getting DeAndre more aggressive and physical, and Jay as well.
Tony, when you talk about a team, you always talk about roles and developing over time, see how it goes. For a coaching staff, with the big change that you had, did you kind of spend some time putting together the plan of who's going to do what, or does that also kind of evolve as the guys are out there on the floor in terms of who'll scout, who does what, who works with who?
No, I think we've done a solid job of that, and you're always evaluating and all that, but knowing your role is important. We added Kyle Getter, and I moved Orlando into a recruiting coaching position, and little adjustments we make every year. We check and say, all right, what can we do to improve? What areas do we feel like we can grow in? And that's what we've done. And with losing someone that has been with me forever in Sanchez, that's a big gap. So guys sharing responsibilities, elevating Coach Williford, Jason to the associate head coach. I think it's been a pretty natural transition, and slight adjustment of some roles.
Coach, just one follow-up. If there's a theme every year, what's the theme or the slogan for this year?
Yeah.
And then two, I heard Jason Williford speak in Richmond in May, and he said that you all, at least within the staff, had mentioned the word zone. I know that's a 4-letter word for you probably, but could you foresee any circumstances under which a Tony Bennett team would play zone defense?
Yeah, I have at different times when I've been here, not a lot. It just depends on the situation as the season progresses. There are times we've played a 1-2-2, we've played a 1-3-1 and a 2-3 over my past 9 years, maybe about 7 possessions in 9 years. But no, a little more than that. But you're always you keep your mind open to your personnel, and you see how guys handle game situations. So, but we're not a primary zone team, and as of right now, I don't think we will be. But would you always consider that if it was needed? Maybe, perhaps you would. Yes. Oh, slogan. Yeah, I mentioned it at media day. It's not any secret, but I like what I think is important for this year is our theme is I wrote on the board United Pursuit, up. Sometimes TAY, so or when you're ISAW, in such a way that's kind of similar, but it's a pursuit. When you pursue something or seek something, you have to do it with all your might. That is, there's no question about it. It involves our pillar of passion. It's a pursuit, but it has to be united. I think last year's team was so united and so collected. I've talked about that, and I like that as an idea because you got to be able to be united in your pursuit when you hit the rough spots, when you hit the good moments, and just that idea, recommitting to that. So I like that. I like the imagery of it. I like the words. So that's it. I'm not making it too big of a deal, but I understand that that's such a key for our program over the years, and will be this year, and maybe even in a bigger way with all the talent of our league, the games, people bringing up expectations of what happened last year. All those things. Got to be united in our pursuit of everything coming at us, and pursue with all our might.
Okay, Brad and Ron and Luke and Doug.
Coach, you mentioned versatility with Braxton now being available. What do you see as the differences between he and Dre, and how do the way that those pieces fit together? What does that do for your team in terms of that versatility?
Yeah, anytime you have versatility, the way the game's going is good. Sometimes teams are playing just like in the NBA. The 5-man, they'll play small ball. Or they'll play, their 4-man can go out and shoot threes and do different things. At times, last year we would switch ball screens with DeAndre. They're similar size-wise, 6'7". Braxton's strong. Different games a little bit. I think right now, I think DeAndre can guard he can maybe go out on the perimeter and guard. Is more comfortable at that. Although Braxton Braxton can too. I think they bring some versatility. They have little differences, but I like them both defensively when they're locked in and playing. They do that. The physicality in the glass. Dre maybe finishes a little better in certain areas. Braxton sometimes plays. At times he's played some point combo. You know, he can handle the ball. I just think they're good players that bring what you said, versatility, and still have room for growth in their games. And I believe they really want to be a part of a team that can pursue something really good. And I'm thankful that he got eligible, and he'll have to continue to earn everything. But I know he's excited, and we're excited to have him and have, again, more quality depth. I think that's, if you ask me this year, where our depth is, there's some guys who've played a lot, maybe 4 guys, 5 guys that have played, but after that, doesn't mean there's not really good players, but there's not experience. Or there's a new guy like in Braxton, he has experience, but he's not played here, and then the other guys don't have experience, or their first years, or it's one of those. So I think that's something that you have to see how it plays out for us.
Kind of building on that, getting Braxton and DeAndre Hunter on the court at the same time, what does that do for your offense? Does that kind of give you guys the ability to push the pace a little bit and maybe score a few more points this season?
I hope we can always score more points. I think there's versatility. As I said, I like the size. If it's one of them is on the perimeter and one's guarding the 4, or if you could play them at 2 forward spots. So I like that from a defensive standpoint, if we're right. And then offensively, there's guys that are mobile, can get on the glass. Both are fairly complete. And, again, opportunities to score more. We always try to do that. We're trying to look at little adjustments this year, whether it's opening the court in different ways. And, again, running's all about is if everyone's willing to run and push, and we're not like certain teams, but we'll do it opportunistically if it presents itself and it's a sound decision. So if they show they can do it with responsibility and soundness, absolutely we'll try to do it, but it's not going to be every possession makes misses when we're down the floor like some programs. I think we're clear in how we have to play, and we need to become even clearer about that to be as good as we can.
Have you ever coached a team where there are potential lineups where you can have capable 3-point shooters from the 1 man all the way to the 5? Is this a first in that realm, or have you experienced that before?
Some of my better teams have been, versatile. I guess it's just the way the game's going. It's the way players are playing. They're improving. Jay Huff, the ability of him to step out and shoot the 3. This might be from that standpoint. Perhaps, yeah. I think you could put a different lineups or unique lineups. I never had a team where I could probably. I don't think I've ever had a team where I could go all small ball. Although we did it. It's funny. We did it. That was more guards against UNC Wilmington in the NCAA tournament. That was hard. All of a sudden we went with that lineup, but size-wise it probably wasn't that way. But I think this might be one of those teams, maybe the most diversified in that regard. So I have to go back and think. You're testing me here, but perhaps.
Could you speak to the maturity that we all saw from Kyle at the ACC Media Day in Charlotte?
Yeah, no, it was. I think it was well documented. Kyle, he wanted the opportunity to go back there, and I didn't read his comments and follow it, but obviously we talked before and then after, and I laughed because Jack said, I think I've used my words for about 2 weeks. I don't need to talk anymore. So you guys might not be able to get him to say anything because it's still close to all the questions he was asked. But from what some of you said and a couple people said, Kyle represented the program and himself in such a positive light, and that matters. So again, when I said I'm thankful for the young men that I've coached and all the others around it, because they represent stuff. I read one of the coolest articles on Malcolm Brogdon. I'm not changing the subject, that actually Whitey wrote about him and getting Joe and Justin to do something with Water Boys, and just the pillar of servanthood. That warmed my heart more than almost anything of thinking of others. And yes, of course, on the court, what that means, but off the court. So when you have young men like Kyle Guy that are sitting in front of the microphone, Devin, Isaiah, and go down the list, all of them, that's good. I think people see that, and it makes them want to pull for them. So obviously kudos to Kyle, and I know he represented himself, his family, and our program well.
Good.
Yeah, because we're going to put out a statement. I don't know when, Bach. 2:30. Okay, soon. And it'll be in the statement, and I'm not going to answer any questions. For right now, there's going to be an indefinite time away for medical reasons for Frankie Badoki. So he won't be at media day here, and you won't see him, on the court or at the first game. So just some time away for medical reasons. That'll be in the statement, but I wanted to make sure you guys knew that. And if I was going to get asked about it, I would have answered it then. But as you go into that media room and, respect that. And obviously I'm going to visit with our players just to let them know about that statement. So thank you for that. And we'll see you.